What's going on, everybody? It's 10 o'clock on the dot on the East Coast. It is September 13th, and you're watching and listening to the Daily AI Show Live. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're talking all about the CEO's Guide to AI. So really what we want to talk about today is, if you're not even a CEO, but a CXO, right? Somebody in a top level position, you could still be a solopreneur, I suppose, but we're thinking more about if you're in charge of leadership at your company, if you have, maybe a company of 50 or more, maybe slightly smaller than that, what do you need to be thinking about? What do you need to know about as far as AI in order to sort of future-proof your business, if there is even such a thing? And so there's two topics we want to kind of talk about today. One of them would be what they call responsible AI, so RAI, and then the other one is ethical AI. So just sort of how they both come into play. And I think probably the best person to jump in on this, since he's sat in a CXO role for quite a while, is Andy. So Andy, what do you want to start off with on this one?
Some people beyond me are thinking about the frameworks that CXOs can use to enter into this with strategic intent and good preparation. And so this responsible AI framework is the first I've heard of it is here on this show. But I'm sure it's something that's going to catch on. It includes strategy, governance, process, and culture as the items that I want to focus on strategy right now. So there are, the first thing that a CEO needs to do is to align the approach to AI with their strategy. Now let's just take the three generic strategies. Looking to be cost leader in your marketplace in order to be effective and grow your market share, or you're looking at differentiating so that your product is distinct and different, or you're focused on a narrow customer set and you're becoming the expert at satisfying the requirements of that customer. Well, every single one of those strategies has a slightly different angle through which you can employ AI. So for example, let's take cost leadership. This is an area where I think most CEOs are already thinking about it, because there's a promise out there in the market space for AI that you can attain operational efficiencies that will reduce your costs and actually improve the quality of your service and product while maintaining competitiveness. So you can really start to optimize using the tools of these AIs, which have reasoning capabilities and action capabilities, which when coupled with automations can really help you reduce costs. And the objective here is not to reduce employee count. It's not reducing a head count. You want to really invest in the upskilling of your workforce and make sure that all of them are using AI in appropriate ways in order to achieve those operational efficiencies. The next strategy would be differentiation. This is really about innovation, capabilities of AIs like brainstorming and identifying blue oceans to address. Those are things that can help you in that strategy. And those are serious capabilities of AI. It's not just about cost reduction. It's really about creative examination of a wide range of possibilities out there. Finally, on focus as a strategy, you want to be expert at let's just say what you want to do is personalize your approach as a marketer and as a service provider to that area of focus that you've identified. And AI can certainly help you with that. So you've got to pick your strategy or identify the strategy you're already pursuing, and then use AI to amplify that, to help you and your team, like get the team using it. And I'm a big advocate for beginning now, the steps that you can take. And we can talk about this later in the show, and I'm sure my colleagues here will have some ways to suggest how you can get your employees to be actively engaged with these tools in order to improve the capabilities of your overall organization. There you go.
Like mic drop. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was good.
I wonder, Andy, just as a follow-up question for me is, we talk a lot about you need top-down support, you need bottom-up support. I mean, I think we've hit both sides of it, with your experience and what you did at, Fit8 and other experiences you've had in that, that CXO role, how important do you think it is when you look towards the future of AI to have that top-down support? And what does that look like to you in order to implement that?
Yeah, so the top-down support is really essential because there's fear in the workforce. There's fear that AI and its use will second them. And that's not really going to happen if, and only if, they have an optimistic, enthusiastic, and supported approach to learning themselves how to exploit the benefits of AI. So top-down approach really means you're going to be a cheerleader for AI, and you're going to be one of the key steps is to identify those people that are already excited about this area and encourage them. Provide encouragement, not only in the form of your personal attentions to the people who are actually taking advantage of it, but also some money. Make some investments in supporting this, because it does cost a little bit of money. Don't make that a burden that each individual employee has to bear themselves. This is an investment in the capabilities of your team.
Ah, love it. And that kind of goes to what you said, Carl, as far as like finding those internal champions. You've talked about that a lot with, your business model, as far as, that's the best way in a lot of times, is to find those champions and sort of land and expand. And it seems like that kind of goes along with what you're saying, Andy, about, supporting those internal champions from inside the business as well. And not making them feel like, like you said, I know I feel it some days. There's definitely been costs that I've gone to my company scaled and said, hey, I've been paying this $20 for ChatGPT Plus. Can you take this off my plate? And yep, we can do that, Brian. You're using it all the time. Now, other things like a Mid-Journey or a 11 Labs or whatever it is, these things kind of add up. So I even feel the pressure. I feel the pain, not the pressure, the pain sometimes, is somebody who's like actively trying to be at the cutting edge of AI to figure out how it can make me better at my job. And I'm lucky that I do have internal support, but I also deal with clients all day long, from the LinkedIn strategy side to the AI side, who say, Brian, I would love to be able to do what you're telling me, but I'm going to get slapped on the wrist if I even try. And that's unfortunate,
Yeah, that's a good point. You have what Andy described, the CEO's kind of a C-suite's role in helping to create an environment that's safe for him. And then you have him companies that just don't do that. And it basically, you can't do a bottom-up approach if you don't have the top-down. It does start with leadership, which gets to what I was going to talk about is, the C-suite, the owners, those in specifically responsible for setting strategy. I think when you're talking about safeguarding tomorrow's businesses, that's going to be something that I think is going to be needed to be folded into the mission, vision, and values, the strategy as well, and the responsibility of seeing the vision of the company. What I'm saying is all that is how is your product and how is your service being impacted by your consumers? Is your product and service volatile enough that AI will make your clients go to an AI solution over you? Now, obviously, if you're buying, an energy drink or a beer, it might not be as affected, but it might be to some degree. So I think that the leadership really needs to look at how their clients and customers are engaging AI now or in the future, and pivot now before that happens, before they lose market share.
So Robert, I wanted to jump in there because our company right now has what's called homecoming. So, we get everyone from around the globe coming to Calgary to, talk about usually, what's on the horizon and so on. And it's funny because yesterday was, all our C-suites talking about, the various priorities. And remember that when Google had their announcement and there were memes about how many times Sundar said AI.
Yeah.
It was literally the same thing yesterday. AI, like from our CFO to our CEO to our CTO. And I think too, they can now this could be for different for different industries and different companies, but I think there's a little bit of a hint and worry that even though, we're the leaders in the market in our industry, it's not going to take very much, right? It's not going to take very much for AI to come in and look, certain softwares and just like, do you need a company of X people? Can you create a company of 10 people to take on a company of 1,000 people or 2,000 people or 3,000 people. So I think as leaders of the business, you have two things to look at. One is, if you are the leader and have a huge enterprise, yeah, you better start pivoting your people and encouraging to use and encouraging integrated into your products. But if you're the leader, if you're one of the ankle biters, you're like, we have the ultimate level, like we can level the playing field right now. Like right now, you can level the playing field. So to me, it's an exciting time for all. But I think there's a little bit of a danger that enterprises, even though they have the infrastructure, they have all the stuff set, but there is that great equalizer that is coming, and it's coming faster. And it won't take very long for those ankle biters to be like, it will wipe out those enterprises, because we now have the tools to do it.
Yeah. And that's a good, interesting you said. I was on a podcast yesterday, the Constant Contact podcast, and he asked the question. He's like, oh, enterprise is going to, jump at this AI stuff. It's like, actually, no, they're slow to move because it's hard to turn a cruise ship, right? And the nimble ones are the ones that are going to absolutely capitalize on it. This is the great equalizer. And to your point, Carl, I think that's really where people listening to this podcast, or if they are, that's the beauty of this particular state. The enterprise, we're going to do it, but they're going to be slow to move. It'll be next year, and they might not be able to implement it as effectively but you'll be able to do a smaller team and actually get to a competitive level with some of your competitors who are double, triple your size.
On that point, the great equalizer idea, there was some research I read months ago now that what AI does in the context of organizational behavior is it brings the mid-level capability employees up. It doesn't change. If you've got your A players, those A players, they become A+ players. Mm-hmm. But it's the B's and the C's who suddenly are at B+ and A- as a result of the ability that's extended through AI.
So here's another thing that sorry.
I was going to say, I was reminded of yesterday. There was I don't know if you guys saw it. There was I think it was a TikTok from Rachel from the AI Express, and she was basically saying that if you're looking at AI as, you're the owner of the business, the CEO, if you're looking at it as a way to reduce manpower, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot in the long term. And I suspect that there are a lot of people who are thinking that. And I want to encourage anyone who's the CXO who is in a position to impact that. Think very carefully before you just willy-nilly get rid of people, because that will come back to bite you in the posterior, if you know what I mean. The other thing also is that, just what Andy said about taking B players and C players and raising them up. From a marketing perspective, something simple like content writing a blog post. ChatGPT can pump out a blog post in a minute. Before, you had to hire someone, even if it was $8 or $10 an hour in a third world country, it still took them half an hour to write an article. You'll get something in 2 minutes or 1 minute. So you can take the not so great performers and raise them up using AI. So it's really something to think about.
Yeah.
I want to make one other point, but before any CEO or CXO out there starts feeling like, oh, urgent, gotta move now. Yeah, you should start now, but relax, because you're way early. If you're listening to this, if you're listening to us speak, you're way early. I read this morning that in the United States, between character AI, which is really up and coming, which is largely used by young people on mobile phones, and ChatGPT, there's approximately 10 million monthly active users. That is tiny. Mm-hmm. And the 6 million is the representation of what's probably happening among employees that you already have who are active on ChatGPT, on OpenAI, and using it. And they're using it in rudimentary ways at this point. There's a level of sophistication that's achieved through prompt experience and prompt training to leverage and amplify what you can do with ChatGPT and others. And this is all going to emerge very quickly as the big players, Microsoft. There was an announcement today also. Salesforce, Salesforce is launching their apparently quite expensive but very replete system for everyone who's using their CRM systems. So it's going to happen, but you're so early to the game. Take your time, do it strategically, and make sure that you're not resistant to it, that you're encouraging your employees to do it.
Just don't procrastinate.
So what I would
So
say to that is
here's-
like, just to add to that real quick, and what you're saying, Andy, and what you're saying, Robert, is like, also, I think a lot of people think the first step of AI is somehow using AI, and it's not really. It's like, I think when I hear when Robert's talking about enterprise, like, or the ankle biters versus the ankle biters, could a highly efficient team of 10 move faster and more nimbly to compete with a 200 or 2,000 employee company? Yeah, we've seen that. We've certainly seen that in the past, where they're able to move faster, adjust, pivot, all those good things. But I also think for the enterprises, like, if you have good leadership, if I was in leadership, I would be at this point saying, okay, it is early. I don't have to have all the AI solutions right now. But what would be super helpful is if I started talking to my next level down leaders, and then maybe next down level, so directors and then managers, and saying, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to start mapping out all the processes that are part of it. If it doesn't exist, it needs to exist. Let's create a Notion page. Just whatever we got to do internally, and start talking about what these individual pieces look like, because ultimately, when those are identified, those will be the actual individual pieces that then could perhaps be replaced by an AI solution. But if you just know this machine runs forward, and you don't really have a strong, from leadership, understanding of why or how, it would be a great exercise, I believe, for any leadership to really start digging in deep and saying, hey, we can see just over the hill, which is, I talk about all the time with AI. We can peer over the next hill. We may not be able to see the full impact of what's coming, but all of us, all 7 of us, have a decent idea of what is in fact coming. We can see just far enough ahead into the future. And so I think that's not proprietary to us 7. That's anybody who cares to know a little bit and look a little bit into AI can see just a little bit into the future. So if that's the case, and you know what's coming, all right, what can you start doing today to put your business in the best place possible for taking on these new innovations tomorrow? And I think a lot of times, I talk about it a lot, I know, but it just goes back to just having a better understanding of what's going on, or how the ship actually moves through the water. And I'm always, I guess, baffled or amazed would be the word, when I work with companies, big companies that we publicly believe have it all worked out, and it's a mess. And they don't. And it's like they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants sometimes. You think, like, how have you made it this far? And it's kind of shocking, So anyway, it just makes me think of that. I do think if you're enterprise, you absolutely can still be super ahead of the game with AI, but it's gonna take that top down to work its way down into the workers, the end users, and talk to those end users and say, what are your process? What do you repeat day in and day out? What is something that you would love to have taken off your plate that drives you mad because it's so monotonous and so routine and so below your skill level, which God knows there's so many things that we all do that are below our skill level, but are part of our everyday job. And then get those end users to start thinking about, if I didn't have to spend 40 minutes every week doing this one stupid little thing, and I could automate that would make my life better. And then that information rises back up to the top. A plan is put in place. And now I think you have something you can actually build off of.
Right.
I just worry about businesses that are just doing the wait and see.
So absolutely, like, tap into your business analysts on your staff, or like reach out to some business analyst consultants, because mapping your processes, we talk a lot about how the data is the gold, right? We're going to mine the data because we know so much, but actually knowing what your processes are, even like are even more fruitful, because mapping out that structure, you have engaged with the people who are doing that, right? So you're already having those conversations, really easy to add into that. So, what is that? If it doesn't surface in the interview, what are your pain points here? Like, what would you love to see? And they're seeing, the people who are doing the tests are already seeing opportunities for where AI could be more efficient. It could be exciting to them. It could be fearful, right? But those conversations are not only really fruitful, like good. You're going to see all these opportunities, but you're also going to start the process. And again, that's not adoption of AI yet. That is prepping your house. And there are all kinds of efficiencies that you may see in that don't involve AI, right? Like it's
good for you
a
anyway.
process. Yeah. I mean, it's a process that,
Yeah.
that may pay for itself without doing anything else, right?
I have a visual for that mapping process. Let me, if I can share that. Give me a second here.
Sure.
Yeah.
So Andy, while you're pulling that up, I just want to, there's one thing that that I've seen, especially from our company, where even if you give people the tools, and even if the CEO and all the C-suites say you should use it, there's too much stuff to use, right? So what I've seen is, oh, you should use it. I use it. These are the things and there's no specific things you should use it. We should use it for coding. You should use it. I think you actually need to have either education teams to educate them on, how to prompt, how to, like, if they're in design, how to use Midjourney, like all the different things. Because if you give somebody, even if you just give them, hey, here's the enterprise version of ChatGPT, like everyone else, you're like, oh, I'm just going to ask it to do something, like Google it, and it'll write, oh, okay, it's okay. But how do you get them to actually integrate it into the workflow? And you're right, Brian, you need to actually do it. Like, hey, what are the tasks you need? Like, how can it improve your efficiency by 30%, decrease the repetitive task by 40%? But you actually have to go out and do it, because even if you passively let people just do it, it's too overwhelming. They don't know where to start.
Right.
How does right?
Marketing AI Institute, on their podcast, they mentioned this. And I like to think of it like, right now, if you're hiring an accountant and they don't know Excel, I mean, you're not going to hire them. It's like it's a foregone conclusion. Yeah. If you're going to hire a graphic designer, they better understand Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, right? But now you're taking in a technology or a tool and you're thrusting it upon existing workforces and saying, here's a new tool. And without any training, like you'd better, and there's going to be a whole new AI ops, as Rachel is a big fan of, but other roles, other opportunities for companies to come in and basically be those trainers to onboard the employees on these technologies. Because you can't just say, turn on Copilot and be like, have fun with it, because that's going to happen. And you're going to have a rollout. I don't think Microsoft has the bandwidth to train every single user of their platform.
No.
Okay, before we shift topics, I just want to share this quickly. This is a business functions map, and you can see this is like the exhaustive list. This is from something called Lean 9, I suppose. But anyway, that's the idea. Look at every function and list every business process that's in your organization. It won't cover all of these, but that's the first step that Beth was talking about.
Yeah, not overwhelming for a lot of businesses.
I would like to make sure that we take just a couple minutes to talk about the other of the key point that we're trying to cover today, and that's ethical AI. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on that. I'd like to start off with talking about having one of the main things about ethical AI is to have human-centered design. And we kind of touched upon that a little earlier about making sure that we make sure that moving forward that we have humans in the loop, right? And that's a common saying amongst our community for multiple reasons. And then just cover a couple of the general ethical principles that we want to make sure that are employed in our AI system, like, transparency. Want to know how the AI came to its decision or its response. Things like accountability and sustainability and things like that. So please, what are your thoughts?
I mean, the obvious one to me is, and it's not sort of super high on the list of ethical, but it's still important, is fact checking. We all know that AI does hallucinate. So if you're putting content out there, whether it's marketing or otherwise, you want to make sure that somebody's checking to make sure that it's accurate and there's not some woo-woo weird stuff that ChatGPT just decided to throw in because it was bored. So, that might, if nothing else, that helps you not look so bad in the public eye, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think for me, it's like if I'm a CXO, I'm going to be focused on, equity and making sure that in a world where there's a lot of work from home or hybrid and stuff like that, really diving deep and making sure that there's fair, access for different socioeconomic reasons on your workforce for people who have access to these tools. For instance, we know that Aaron has talked before. He's in Australia, doesn't have access to Claude. Well, that could be a very big hindrance to Aaron if he's on a team and that's not being brought to light. That Aaron would now have a disadvantage if the rest of the team is using Claude and he doesn't have it. Or we can look at it from the financial side of things. These tools do cost money, as we were talking about at the beginning. And so if the rest of your sales team has chosen to pay $20 extra a month in order to have GPT-4, advanced data analysis, all the plugins, access to the internet, that's pretty damn huge. And if somebody else is also on that team, but maybe we don't know, and they're, it's month to month for them and their family, or they're taking care of their elderly, or whatever the reason is, and $20 extra a month is just not on the table. I think as your executives, you need to make sure that there is equity when it comes to AI, so that if you're championing it from the top, sure, but you also have to make sure that everybody has equal access to the tools that you're saying are the ones that are going to change the difference. Otherwise, people are going to find themselves out of a job because their performance and their efficiency is going to suffer in comparison to their counterparts, and it may not be their fault.
Yeah, so although I would partially agree, I would say there's also the opposite of that you got to be careful of, because are you going to deny access to those who can afford to pay it on their own if you decide you're not going to pay for it as a company? Because then you're like, no, you don't do that. That's terrible. That's like you're basically penalizing people for taking initiative and spending their own money to go out and use a tool. So I partially agree that yes, you want to make sure that it's equal across the organization, but if you decide not to make it across the organization and you pay for it, then you can't forbid people from using it just because you're trying to protect the few people that don't have access.
There's economic ways to make it accessible in the organization, and one of the ways to do that is to have a central account, a company API key, and express access through Slack or some other tool, and allow everybody to use it for any purpose whatever. And then you will see, maybe Slack doesn't do this exactly, but you could easily see what the traffic level is by individual, but you're not paying $20 per seat for people who aren't using it. So it's not simple. It might be simple to just pay for everybody's account with the open API, but that's not probably the best and most economic.
So here's an interesting thing too. So let's say the company, gets an enterprise license, but it isn't GPT-4. It's only 3.5 for everybody, and then it's 4 for a couple people. We all know the difference between 3.5 and 4, right? The gap that's there. So what happens then? Like, who do you provide which? Like, and that was, to me, was interesting, where I've seen some companies provide 3.5, like, we can use it 3.5, and then there's some people who are like, 3.5 is not good for me. I can do better, so I will pay the $20 for the 4. So how does that play out? Because again, like, the level of quality you can get out of a 4 versus 3.5, there's a huge difference, which is just another, little thing that I want to throw in there.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. I would base it myself just on evaluation of the work product that's being generated by the people who are using the tools. And if they're producing good output, with GPT-4, and it's worth $20 a month for me to keep that up, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Which comes back
It's a bit like,
so I'll do my TLDR while I'm commenting on that, because that comes back to, as a leader, what are you, as a leader, how are you framing the environment in which people are going to engage in AI in your company to the success of the company and the success of the people, right? And that involves all of those things that we just said.
No. All right,
Exactly.
quick. Let's wrap it up. TLDR. One piece of advice. Go.
Don't be scared. Stick your toe in the water and just try, and look for champions in your organization, that people like us who would be enthusiastic enough to want to go further with it. So embrace those people to guide you if you're not that great in that space.
Make it fun. Gamify the process of using it. And, this is, large language models can do astounding things. It's mind-blowing and educational, and it's inspiring. So take away the fear, make it a fun thing, and encourage everyone.
I would say, what I said before, which is just, start with the simple tasks, the complex task, but the simple move of starting to identify your processes and your tasks within your business, like you, Andy and Beth, you were talking about, because I think that's where you're going to have the biggest impact today.
The sky is falling. So I believe that my advice is that there will be two types of businesses in the future: those who use AI and those who are out of business. So pivot now, adapt now, so that you're not one of the casualties of war.
And mine would be like, make sure to invest in some sort of education for your business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beth, I don't know if you did. Was yours TLR the first thing you said?
That was my. Yep. No, I'm done.
Right, so you were early at the end. Jimmy, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, I'll wrap it up with invest in your people. The more you put in your people, the better you're gonna get output for your company. Plain and simple.
Love it.
Brilliant.
Well, I think that was, I really enjoyed that conversation. I went by so fast, like all of them do, but there's just so much value in there. I hope everybody who's listening or watching got value out of this as well. I feel like I learned a ton as always. We'll be back tomorrow and Friday to do it again. Until then, this has been the Daily AI Show. Come check us out on Spotify, check us out on YouTube or LinkedIn, even expanding the podcast out to Apple and Overcast here in the next couple of days. So you'll be able to see us on all sorts of different platforms. Come see us. All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Happy Wednesday.
Hump day.
Yeah.